let's begin. Today is a very, very special day. It is the second day of Iyar. I was trying to find something very, very special from the Rebbe Marash. Now, the Rebbe Marash was the fourth Chabad Rebbe, and he was born on this day. In fact, today, because of the Sfiras HaOmer, it's a very, very, very holy and significant day. And because it is Tiferes Shebet Tiferes. Now we know, of course, with the Midos, with the divine emotions, that Tiferes is where it's all at, right? So before our universe came about, there was a universe before it, not a physical, spiritual, but this universe had great emotions, basically holy emotions. However, as we know with emotions have a problem. And that is, emotions are a bit like addictions. Whatever I think is right, and everybody has to think like me. And the problem with emotions is that if it's not balanced, it can lead to divisiveness. On the other hand, intelligence is the trait of the universe that we have. The world of tikkun, the world of fixing. So the world of toyu, like its name, is chaos. And the world of tikkun, the world of fixing, like its name, is something that's kind of, everything has its place, everything is organized. And that's because there's a balance. Because when the intelligence and the emotions are kind of in sync, then things are balanced, things are normal. So effectively, there are two emotions which are the kind of precursor of all emotions, and that is the emotion of love, traction, and fear, retraction. And they have all these kind of offshoots. But really, everything that a person will ever think, say, or do is based on some kind of a love or a fear. Because if you don't have a motivation, you don't do anything. Even your thought process is like your computer. Anything you're going to do is based on a love or a fear. You're looking for something, or you're looking for information because you're afraid of something, so you need to overcome something. So everything is based on love or fear. Now there's a balance emotion, and that balance emotion is the emotion of Tiferes. So Tiferes is when you take your intelligence and you start to, if you take a little bit of water and a little bit of flour and you start to mix it. You got to have the right mix. If you have the right mix, everything's going to work out. So truth is not, and this is a big mistake that people make, is people get emotional about something. Very good. Whatever it is. They could be emotional about their religion, emotional about their ideology. But if all you are is emotional, then you're not balanced, because you don't know if your emotions are getting the better of you or not. And we see this very clearly in all of human history, whether it's, unfortunately, some religions, obviously, kind of radical Islam today, or ideologies, which let's call it the Communist Party. I mean, people murdered people for the sake of some stupid idea. So even, the means and the ends have to both be justified. You can't just say, oh, the means justify the end. And so that's where the emotion can overtake the mind. Now, as we speak about the Rebbe Rashab, really was perfect in his emotional disposition. And he had a very, very powerful saying, which the Rebbe was very, very fond of. And it really was a way of life for the Rebbe, and the Rebbe teaches us that it should be a way of life for us as well. And by the way, I think we'll do 7 o'clock. For those that are interested, we'll do a kind of a conference Farbrengen, because the Rebbe speaks about having Farbrengens on his birthday. But in any event, the point is that the saying of the Rebbe Rashab was like this. He says, most people, when they encounter a problem, they say, or he gave an example of you come to a place and I forgot exactly how it is, but you encounter a problem, so you try to go under it, right? So let's say you come to to a hill. So your first thing is, I'm not going to climb the hill. I'll try to go around the hill. He says, my way is first go over it. In other words, there's a part in us that has fear. And so when a person has fear, the first thing they want to do is prevent themselves from getting hurt. But if a person is brave, he says, okay, I'm going to take the best route. I'm not going to take kind of the safest route. I'm going to take the best route, the way that's going to work out best. And that's a very, very critical thing in life, because we have a mission. Everybody that's here on this planet, is certainly a Jew, is a soldier of God. So unfortunately, a lot of our Jewish brothers and sisters take kind of this kind of a passive approach. And in passiveness, it's like, what did Churchill say? An appeaser is someone who feeds a crocodile hoping it's going to eat him last. It doesn't work, because those that are messed up, they're aggressive and they don't have values, or their values have been skewed by their emotions or their ideology. And so therefore a person has to, obviously in a nice way, be assertive and stand for what's right. But to begin with, you don't have to go and wait for the problem to occur. You have to solve the problem. You have to see the problem. You have to go head on. And the Rebbe, of course, was a wonderful example of this, because the Rebbe combined the emotions, right? He wasn't an aggressive person. He was a very loving and kind person, but he was also a very strong person, right? The combination of chesed and gvura, and that's what Tiferes is. And that's the ideal that we have to achieve, which is we know who we are, we know what we stand for, and we're going to stand for it. And in that way, God comes to our aid, and we truly have the capacity to change the world. I always have this idea of getting a little involved in politics, because I think that we need a better direction. So I was speaking to a lady the other day, so she gave a good line. I asked her to do something, so she said, she's not Jewish, but sometimes they have some good lines, so I'm not sure where the line comes from, but she says, it's not that you have to be powerful. It's that when you accept what God tells you to do, you are empowered. And so it's a very profound concept, which is, we often think, who am I to make a change? The answer is that it's not the power that you have, it's the power that is given to you when you work with Hashem. So a Yid always has to know, and that's really the lesson that we see from all the Lubavitcher Rebbes. I mean, it's quite amazing, a story with the Rebbe Marash. Is unfortunately at that time in Russia there were pogroms. So first he tried to get some of the Jews, and they were good Jews, but they had business connections with the government to speak to the government, because the government, of course, made the pogroms to divert attention from the masses' own problems. But they were afraid of losing their business connections, and et cetera, et cetera. So he personally took a trip to France, and the French government was into the idea of liberty, and he spoke to them, and they basically blackmailed Russia, because Russia needed loans from France, that they had to stop these pogroms. So the Rebbe Marash said, this is a very profound, important story. Rebbe Marash said that had these Jews listened, they would have saved lives. In other words, a Rebbe doesn't need our help. A Rebbe, Hashem doesn't need our help. In 1 second, the whole world can come right. In 1 second, it will. One beautiful day, Mashiach is going to come. If there's a problem in the world that we can fix, it's Hashem wants people to have the merit of fixing problems. He's giving us a privilege. It's like a parent that tells their child, I want you to clean the house. The parent doesn't need the child to clean the house. He wants the child to become a mensch, to become, to take pride or whatever, to learn good habits. So everything in this world, it's not that we're needed. We're not actually needed. In 1 second, the whole thing will come right one day. But Hashem is giving us, he's saying, look, I want to give you a mitzvah. I want to give you an opportunity. And I mean, what a beautiful thing that there are people that do take these initiatives, that do things. And these are the Rebbe Rashab said that when a Jew does a favor to a fellow Jew, God tells the angels, this is why I created my world. And so this is a very important concept, and so the Rebbe Marash shows us this notion. There's a story with the Rebbe, a very interesting story, that he once told a couple of Hasidim to go, I think, talk to the president about a law regarding Israel. He wanted something done. So this was like a Thursday. And, imagine I told you go speak to Trump. So on Sunday, he asked his secretary, Rabbi Groner, Olav Shalom, he says to him, did they go? So Rabbi Groner didn't say anything. So the Rebbe says, look, you work for me. I want to know, did they go? So he basically said, look, they didn't think it was realistic. So the Rebbe said like this. He says, don't you think I also knew it wasn't realistic? But had they gone, they would have opened up a new window in heaven and they would have succeeded. And the same thing, this is a very, very important concept. We must know a Jew is not a regular creature. A Jew literally is divine divinity on earth. And if you look at all the great changes in the world, they all happen through Jews. The massive changes, thought changes especially, even philosophy comes from a Jew in Alexandria who was called Philo. All major events came through Jews. So why does Hashem use Jews? Because whenever you're transforming something, you need a power that's higher than the environment that you're in. And that power is Hashem. So we are all empowered with infinite ability, obviously positive ability. And therefore, we have to understand that our capacity is infinite. And that's the idea of the Chatchila Ribber. If you see yourself in a limited way, so you're going to limit yourself based on how you see yourself. You can't see yourself as a Gentile. Gentiles don't have the same abilities that Jews have. Not to say we're better than them. It's just saying that we have been given certain divine gifts that we have to implement, we have to use. And when a Jew understands who he is, that he's literally divinity on earth, and therefore he contains the infinity of God, so therefore there's no question I'm going to change the world. Of course I'm going to change the world because I have the capacity to change the world. Now, this ties into the Mamer that we're going to do. This actually reminds me, Yidel asked for me to teach something from the Reb Marash, so it was something very beautiful that I once read. The Reb Marash, he was unfortunately, I think he was quite ill in general, and he once he came somewhere, and the Chassidim, normally they would try to hear a Mamer, deep discourses, and he wasn't up to like a long talk, but he decided to come out and just share something. And what he shared, as often the case is, when you share a punchline, what you share is even more beautiful than a whole long dissertation. And he shared, I'll just tell you what I remember from it. It was kind of the 7 habits of a chassid. And so there was the pros and the cons. So first of all, a chassid is somebody who learns from everyone, right? This is something that the Mishnah tells us, that, Ezeu chacham halayim mikol adam, who is wise, whoever learns from everyone. Everything that you see is there to teach you some kind of lesson in avodas Hashem, right? This is a great principle of Chassidus, that the world that we live in is not a random world. This is, in fact, the great tragedy of, if you want to call it, secular thinking, which in a way is based on a subconscious desire to think this way because it removes a sense of responsibility. But what secular thinking does is it says that this world is random, right? All the different factors of secular thinking all tie into an approach that the world is random. Why? Because if you believe it's random, then it takes away your sense of responsibility. But the truth is the exact opposite is the truth. The world is not random. Not only is it not random, the randomness of the world itself is a miracle. The nature, I remember this guy who knew statistics very well. He says, when you look at the statistics and the trends in statistics, you realize itself that it's a miracle. So that means that the world functions like Einstein says. There are only 2 ways to live life. One is though everything is a miracle. The other is though nothing is. In other words, the world is presented in such a way that it gives us free choice. the free choice that the world gives us is basically, as our sages say, everything comes from God except belief in God. Because once you believe, it changes everything. But Chassidus takes the whole thing to another level, right? Because before Chassidus, it was quite simple, which hasn't been abrogated by Chassidus, but it's been complemented. Before Chassidus, everything was simple. There's Torah and mitzvahs, do Torah and mitzvahs, that's what's right, don't do it, you got a mistake. Chassidus comes along and says, things are actually infinite. In other words, it's true Torah and mitzvahs is true. However, there's another component to reality that is, in fact, more important than Torah and mitzvahs. And that is growth, tshuva, your spiritual growth. And spiritual growth is infinite. So suddenly we have a new reality. In other words, of course, Torah and mitzvahs that's just the bedrock. That's the foundation. And if you think about it, you look at the 10 Commandments, basically, today we take that for granted. I mean, who would think of killing, stealing, these kind of things? We've already inculcated these value systems. So now we're ready for a much higher connection. This is the new Torah of Mashiach. And this is that, in fact, you are infinite. Your soul is infinite. You have infinite capacity. Because we can always grow more. We can always learn more. We can always transform to become an entirely renewed, better human being. And the way Hashem does this is, obviously we are a finite person. So I exist within time-space consciousness. But my time-space consciousness can inculcate new information. And as long as I'm a grower, that's why it says, the person is like a tree of a field. As long as I'm willing to advance, I'm not stuck, whether through fear or through ego in my state, then every single moment is a moment where God has got a message for me that I could transform. So, for example, you walk in the street and you see something, it's a message. You have to develop a God sense. God is always communicating. He communicates in hints. Why does he communicate in a hint? A hint has 3 tremendous benefits to it. The first is you can tell everyone an entire story in 1 second. The second is a hint gives you freedom of choice. A hint is not obligating you. It's like, I'm giving you advice. You want to take it, you take it. And so therefore, God speaks to us in hints. He's giving you direction. He's also giving you the freedom of choice. But also the other thing about a hint is that people have an option to ignore them or to look for them. And that's why, like Einstein said, the world, it's either you believe in miracles everywhere or nowhere. In other words, God really created a reality in which you don't want to believe, you can literally not believe. And you do want to believe, you can see God everywhere. I met this guy, he was a NASA scientist, a whole long story. But anyway, he became a little more spiritual. And he told me that he had a friend. This guy was in California, this producer. He produced over 100 shows. So he said, before I was looking for God, I didn't see him anywhere. Now I see him everywhere. And that's the thing, is that once you get involved in this kind of thinking process, you realize that Hashem is always communicating to you. Now, you have to use your head to figure out what exactly is he saying. But like any language, the more you use it, the more you listen to it, the better you get at its meaning. Because a language is not really words. A language is meaning. The words, you can say the same word in a different language, it means 2 different things. So it's not the letters themselves that have any value. It's what those letters mean. And that's what happens in life. As you become a seeker of truth, of growth, you begin to understand the messages that God tells us. So the first thing is that whenever you see someone, you have to learn something positive from that person. Everybody has some kind of quality. In fact, we're all unique. We all have gifts that the other person doesn't have. And a person who's wise looks at everybody and says, what is special about that person? What can I learn from that person? And this is an important trait that we have to have. So that's one of the traits of a chassid. I'm just trying to remember things. One of the things he says, the chassid is about unity. Even for the sake of the further, like for the promotion of chassidus, he never uses arguments. And this is an important thing, as I mentioned before. Unfortunately, many ideologies, they become very emotional about their ideology. And then they feel it's justified, Islam being a great example, they feel it's justified to use terrible means to promote their ideology because they're doing the right thing. But the thing is, it doesn't work like that. If your ideology is about peace, then the way you spread your ideology has to be peaceful. And this is really, of course, the way of the Rebbe, which is we have an obligation to teach. But the obligation to teach also has to be in a peaceful way, also has to be in a respectful way. Like God, we have to give people freedom, but yet it's our duty to give them the information. So it creates a duality. I'm trying to remember some of the other things that he said. He said a chassid is happy, right? So happiness is a very important thing. You know, happiness is something that is up to the individual, and the individual must take responsibility to be happy. I can't expect anyone to make me happy. I have an obligation to make me happy. Chassid is not sad, right? Happiness is the way of a chassid. In fact, the chassidim, before they were called chassidim, they were called the freiliche, the happy ones, because they were happy. And so happiness is very, very important. It's a very important way of Hashem, certainly according to Kabbalah. Happiness shows that we trust in God, right? A person who has faith would be happy, so we have to have faith. You know, I wrote a booklet called, it's a paraphrase translation of the very classic Duties of the Heart, and he has a gateway to trust. And so I read the booklet yesterday, and basically, trust in God means that God knows exactly what he's doing. Whatever he's doing is best for you, and you have that kind of faith that he has a full power. So a person that has this kind of faith would obviously have joy. What else? You know, obviously gratitude in the morning helps us have happiness. So these are the things that I recall. If I do find it, I'll try to send it to you. It was very, very beautiful. The seven habits of a chassid. Okay, so let's start now the Mamer. The Mamer is the idea of Pesach Sheni, right? So Pesach Sheni is coming up. Today is the 2nd of Iyar. The 14th of Iyar was Pesach Sheni. And Jews who were, for whatever reason, Tameh, they couldn't come to the Beis HaMikdash. So these people, they had an opportunity to bring the Pesach Sheni a second time. And that was on the 14th of Iyar, and there are different things. Okay, so the story is as follows. Lahavin Inyan Pesach Sheni. Var Admur Hatzamach Tzedek Ma'amari Divrei HaMaschal Zeh. And the Alter Rebbe speaks about in his Mamer with this beginning, the Inyan Pesach Sheni Yuvan al Pi Shloisha Hakdamas. That Pesach Sheni we can understand through three possibilities. Hakdama Aleph, the first possibility, he hahefresh bein chodesh harishon Nisan v'chodesh hasheni Iyar b'avodas ha'adam. So once we understand what is the difference between Nisan and Iyar in avodas ha'adam, now remember this is a very important concept, and that is the idea of avodah, right? What did we say before? That everything in life, there are two parts of life. There's the finite part and the infinite part. Avodah is the infinite part. Anything that happens, certainly if it happens in people and things, you see that there's a lesson. Certainly in Torah, everything has a lesson. And that's really one of the very beautiful things about Chassidus, is Chassidus has a teaching. So Pesach isn't only a physical event. It's not only eat matzah. Matzah is a spiritual event. It has a lesson. Matzah means humility, right? Shofar isn't only blow a shofar, it's also coronate God as your king. So everything turns into a avodah. There's a spiritual exercise in everything. So what is the spiritual exercise of Nisan? And what is the spiritual exercise of Iyar? Nisan, which the point is Yetzias Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt. This means stay away from evil. In other words, here's a situation that I have challenges. Let's say I have a challenge with, I don't know, a person likes pork, God forbid, so it's difficult for him. So he has to run away from it. It's a challenge. What do we have in Chodesh Iyar? Chodesh Iyar, we have something unique. What is it that we have unique? That every single day there's a new mitzvah, and the mitzvah is Sfiras Omer, to count the Omer. Which Sfiras Omer is to transform our emotions to positive emotions, right? So now we're not running away from evil. Now we're doing avodah, we're growing. So the very first step that a person has, as we see even in a child, is you have to keep the child away from kind of evil. Child doesn't know right from wrong. But then you get to a higher level, which is transformation and infinite growth. And the second thing is the difference between these 2 months and the idea of the first month is a month of Malchus. Malchus blow to above. The second month is Yisoid, which as you're going from below to above, then it's the second spirit. So the Mamer explains so these two things, what is Nisan and Iyar in Avodah, and what are they in the spheres? They are interconnected. So this is like the first level is the level of the Shvatim. The tribes are like a Reuben, Shimon, Levi, etc., which was the level of Malchus, which that's the first birut. That's step number 1. That's called Bittul Yesh. So number 1, God creates us, and we have a big ego, which is important because without an ego, you don't have a drive. But you also have to humble the ego. So that's called Iskafia. However, Yosef was on a much higher level than his brothers. He was called Yosef HaTzadik. That's why they couldn't get him, because he was on a different level. That's the level of Yisoid. And this means Nichlal Belikus, that he has to become one with God. And this is a higher level. It's not that you have an ego. It's that you and God are one entity. So it's a much higher level. So then we have another level. We have the level of Pesach. Pesach means jumping. In other words, you get to a level that you can't get to it on your own. You have to jump beyond. You have to go using the power of infinity. So from this we understand that also the idea of Pesach Sheni is the idea of jumping. So you have to jump higher than the whole order of reality. Right, so this is really one of the ideas of the Mashiach times, that there's a direct connection from Hashem. And in the direct connection from Hashem, it's a little bit like quantum physics. Suddenly some things don't make sense anymore. We live in a world where the mind integrates information in a very, very kind of a deterministic pattern, right? Even Einstein, who believed quantum physics because of the proof, he didn't want to believe it. He said, I'm going to search for deterministic patterns. Why? Because it's much easier to find something deterministic, because you say, okay, this goes at that speed, I can control it, I know it, I understand it. But in absolute truth, things are not deterministic. Things are miraculous, things are kind of reactionary. And so eventually a person has to grow to the point where you can get beyond your own mind. The mind gives you a basic pattern of reality, which really is an assumption. But the soul and the heart give you a pattern of reality in which the infinite can be in the finite. And so therefore it doesn't have to make sense, it just has to be right. Like it says, God cannot be comprehended through the mind, but he can be apprehended and sensed through the heart. So the difference between the first and second Pesach is, where does this infinite dynamic come to? The Pesach, I read a very beautiful thing from the Baal Shem Tov this Shabbos. Once upon a time, there was a king, and the king had a beloved son. So he thought to himself, I would like to give my son my treasures. But he knew the son was young and he was weak. Everybody would come and steal the treasures. So what he did is, he hid the most beautiful treasures behind a wall in the palace, and he made a little indentation in the wall. And he told his son, listen, I want to tell you something. This room is not a regular room. Think carefully about this room. And so he passes away, and the basic treasures that he had first get plundered by the servants. And then his ministers were a little clever. So his ministers feel this wall, and they realize behind it is a treasure. And the kid is left, and he comes into a room, and the treasure is gone. But he remembers what his father told him. And he thinks to himself, why did my father tell me this? He probably realized what was going to happen. And he looks deeper and he sees an even kind of more subtle indentation, and he walks in and he gets the greatest treasure that exists. And the same thing as God gave to the Gentiles science. He gave them, whatever, even ancient traditions, even ancient Egypt had great science. This was the outer treasures. This is kind of, ideas of the world, mathematics, astronomy, whatever. Then God put Yiras Hashem, fear of God. Fear of God he already gives to the ministers, to the Jewish people in general. Is the idea of, fear of God. People that are coming close. But then there's the love of God. The greatest truth. And this is for the kind of, within the Jewish people themselves, those that are really seeking the truth. And so this is a beautiful thing, that the first Pesach, which is connected to stay away from evil, giving you the Torah, the basics, this is for everybody. But the second Pesach, this is for somebody that really wants it. Mamer the Pirish Pesach Sheni who shall deal with Pesach Sheni Nimshach Ba'Dagat Sheni so he took him out to deal with Pesach Sheni shall deal with Naili Yoyse Nida Gambazeh shall deal with Nimshach Ba'Dagat Sheni get to the comments. Hey, now this level that comes in Pesach Sheni is a higher level that comes in the first Pesach. Right? We know that the level of divinity that will come when Mashiach comes is a much higher level than the divinity that came when God gave us the Torah. It's a very, very big subject. I don't want to go into great detail. We've spoken about it before, but it's a big subject. So now we can explain the idea that of the Tzemach Tzedek, that the second Pesach is a second level in our service of God that comes after the first level. Pesach Sheni is a rectification of a person who didn't offer the Korban Pesach. Oh, this is a very beautiful thing, very profound lesson, one of the most important lessons in life. The Hasidic teaching on Pesach Sheni is, what is the Avodah? What does it teach us? Sinidot came farfalin. There is no such thing as too late. That's such an important concept, because if you look at the world in a way of deterministic, you missed it. You missed it. It was time. The time passed. You missed it. Also, unfortunately, if people are harsh, they like to say, you're a bad person. You didn't do it. Bad news. You're bad. But Judaism says there's no such thing as too late. There's no such thing as bad. Any second, this very second, you want to come to Hashem, Hashem is there with open arms for you. Why? Because Hashem doesn't have past, present, future. Your past is His future. You're just in a journey with Him, whether you realize it or not. So with the moment you open up yourself to Hashem is the moment that Hashem is there for you. He was always there for you. You weren't with Him. He was always with you. Hashem doesn't have any restrictions. Even the Torah is not a restriction. If you sinned, you didn't do anything to God. You didn't hurt Him at all. Maybe you stayed away from Him, but He didn't stay away from you. It's like a parent and a child. The parent always loves the child. The child may run 1,000 miles. He's got his issues. He's got to create his own identity. No problem. But the moment you come, say, Tati, I love you, the Father is there for you. Because the Father, His love is unconditional. So there's no such thing as a problem. There's only a question, what direction are you heading in? So Hashem says we have no limitations here. There's no limits. You can't make Hashem angry. You can't run away from Hashem. You can run away from your own soul, but you can't run away from God. And that's what Pesach Sheni says. It doesn't matter what your past is. This moment, you coming to me, I'm happy to see you. It's never too late. Yuvin Zeb Behektim Yudua will understand this by first understanding what's known. This hapka who commercial who nimshach levar. Bikra vayisham zahu. Layini abirim. Allah hamshich or commercial benegelas first. You say the nyan shachet sheni besfiris. Adanas open negela vayis besfiris aime nyan shachet sheni bavis to Adam. Shigri nyano the fibirach who labir am nefesh Bahamas alam shachs mem tashari bina. Bachal yidays the nimshach gam shar hanun. Beshleimar the zel gam ashir who rosh tevis Avram Yisrael Yaakov Rachel. Shehem Dalad Agle Merkava Shabitul the Merkava who babes from Lachila in Moklin shall Yashas Makoshkin the Rash Sarah Liffle by Bittel or Britannia being of his hand in Merkava shall Nasa Merkava Akla Alien Levadi Claiming. Okay. So this teaches us the idea, two things that the Rebbe mentions here. The first is a little esoteric, and I don't want to go too deeply into it, not that I understand it that well, but the idea is that you have Shar Hanun. It says that Moses received 49 gates of wisdom. Till basically the day of his passing, he received the 50th gate of wisdom. The same thing happened with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Moses and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, they were two very unique souls. They were called Nunei Yama. They came from the world that preceded our world, the Shemitah Rishona. Maybe that's Tayu. But in any event, they were in a different paradigm. But this is the paradigm of Mashiach, where the infinite and the infinite Hashem and His great kindness comes to us, little people. But when we think about our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Joseph, who was also a soul of Atzilus, again, very big subject, which we're very briefly touching on. What was unique about them, the Shiva Royim, the 7 shepherds, right? They come to us in Sukkot, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, and Shlomo, Yosef. They are the ones that had what was called a Merkava. They were like a chariot. What's the difference between a horse and a wagon? The horse has his own opinion. He's afraid of the whip, or he wants the straw. The wagon doesn't have an opinion. Wherever you tell it to go, it goes. And that was the way of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Rachel. They were tzaddikim. They did anything Hashem thought and wanted. They didn't have any questions. And so therefore, this is the ultimate level where a person can get to this level like our great ancestors, because we have it in us as well, just to be a vehicle of God's will on earth. So we see here that in this month we have two almost contradictory but complementary avodas. One is this hapcha, which is a transformation, and the complete going away of evil, and the other is continuous growth, going higher and higher all the time. This is why the counting of the Jewish people in the second month, in the second year, was to Moshe Narain. Because the idea of peace is connected to Aaron. The idea of Aaron is that he pursued peace. And the whole idea of peace is that we shouldn't have pirud, we shouldn't have war. The idea of Asatev in the month of year is Moshe, which the idea is Teresh Melachile and Shaykh Onus in his book, you cannot have anything different. That immediately when Moses was born, his house became full of light. This, that going out of Egypt was through Aaron Moshe. Even though the avodah of going out of Egypt was staying away from evil, so this is a very important point. We know that the Tanya is all based on the concept of being a Beinani. What is a Beinani? Alter Rebbe's premise is that, as it says in Judaism, in the Talmud, that there are 5, so to say, categories of people, or we always in one of 5 categories. The first is the category of the tzaddik, basically subdivides into 3. The second is the category of the Beinani, and the third is the category of the Rasha. And the tzaddik is somebody who's beaten his Yetzer Hara, which is a very, very hard level. The Beinani is somebody who suppresses his Yetzer Hara, right? We all have Yetzer Hara, we all have certain predilections or desires or issues. And so a normal person, we fail once in a while and we feel guilty. However, the Beinani is someone who really controls his thought, speech, and action, and he's really on top of his spiritual game. However, even the Beinani is not a tzaddik because he's always has to deal with his kind of predilections and always have to overcome, right? He's got his issues. But the Alter Rebbe says even a Beinani can become a tzaddik. You have to try to become a tzaddik. And the Rebbe, in fact, says that after all of our avodah that we have gone through in our thousands of years, our souls are refined to the point that we can become tzaddikim. So also on the flip side, that even when we're in the month of Iyar, that when we're in a time of transformation, which is this hapcha, and even higher, which is the level of Merkava, but still you have to have some of that transformative power of Iskafia, which is why we're going to remember going out of Egypt, even in the days of Mashiach. So what's the idea here? When a person is dealing with evil, you can say, tzaddik is so much better. Why should you remember having to run away from evil like the Jews did when they were in Egypt? Because when the evil is strong, so that the fear of the evil causes a certain, that's why the Baal Tshuva is the greatest desire of Hashem, because he was in the secular world. And he realizes its aimlessness and its uselessness. So therefore he's running away from it. He's running to truth. That drive is very, very important. It's a very powerful thing. Before we have anything in life, you have to have drive. So when we run, because God is the other half of our soul, so whatever we do, God does. So when we're running to light, then it causes the Shekhinah to rebound. But it's hapcha, which transforms after you left the evil, and much more so when you're doing good. This is in a normal, this is in an orderly manner. Therefore, you have to bring down the jumping of going out of Egypt. So this is a very powerful concept, that you might think the highest level is a tzaddik, but actually the highest level is about tshuva. Why? Because about tshuva has this passion. That's the first vision that Moses got from Hashem. He came to a burning thorn bush. So what is a thorn bush? A thorn bush represents the lowest of bushes. You've seen a thorn bush. I've seen them in Africa. They're just prickly and they're like bare. And yet this thorn bush didn't burn. So what's the point? The point is that it's specifically the person that's humble, that doesn't think he's great, that his passion for Hashem is the greatest. There's a story once that there was a simple person, the Baal Shem Tov loved the simple Jews very, very much. And once the Maggid, he was at the table, and the Baal Shem Tov, of course, was a great teacher of the secrets of God. And there was times for the simple people to be there, and there was times for the great tzaddikim to be there. And the Maggid had a thought. He felt like, why is the Baal Shem Tov giving so much attention to the simple people? Give them a little bit of wine, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Before, when we were saying the secrets of the Torah was so beautiful, so amazing. So the Baal Shem Tov sensed what he was thinking, and he was actually thinking this while the Baal Shem Tov was teaching. So, and he was enjoying the pleasure of the teachings, and that was the thought he had. So the Baal Shem Tov asked them to form a circle. All the people, all his students put their hands on the shoulders of the other. Suddenly they sensed the sweetest sounds in the world. People saying, "Oh, my loving Father," these beautiful, beautiful sounds. And then he took off his hands, and all these great tzaddikim, they felt a great sense of tshuva. So he said, this is the sounds of the Tehillim of the simple Jews saying Tehillim. In other words, those people that can't satisfy their thirst in knowledge, and they just do a mitzvah or say Tehillim, these people, they are the ones that are giving God the greatest pleasure. Right? Because ultimately love is a reaction. It's not knowledge, it's a reaction. And so it's our great unbounded love for Hashem that creates his great unbounded love for us. So this is truly infinite. So when you combine these two things, you have the greatness of the Baal Tshuva and the greatness of growth. So now you've got quite a nice combination. This is very, very powerful what the Rebbe says here. The first Pesach is about our body. The body was sunken in Egypt, and we're all in our own little Egypts, our own little predilections or fears, whatever it is. And so going out of Egypt means you running away from your issues, and you're freeing yourself from them. On the other hand, the second Pesach is about your godly soul. And that's to say, no, not only are you free, but you're also unbounded, you're unlimited. And therefore, it's very important for us to realize that we don't get into a state of, oh, I'm free, I made it. No, I'm free. I'm in the path of infinity. Ashu dil gam gabe dil the Pesach Rishon. Val derach mach kozak meis sich mer besam in the fleish like you lim the gulu asida you in the fleish gam gabe in the fleish how you see it beside. Wie in Schach Pesach Shin the gulu asida brought is eating in medisch gulus beside. Then a gulu megulus bubble which I go ulu is the gulu asida dugwas haner. Gulus asida he come shamish in nichmo. For said the session gulu beside nimshal haner who hiner who begins machs. Gulu how you begulus beside me yes gulu shal manu stalsh how you be stalsh. Genis malchus. But because of Pesach of Ayala Pesach, the Pesach who Malchus Canal Sif He'alef. So moving the Zesha Gula Sid Nimshler Shemesh who Kegili Lamamish Talsha Shia Oz even Zot. Zuya Shas the Pesach Sheni Gula Sidiki Gilu the Pesach Sheni will be say Zot. So the Pesach Sheni is very much related to the infinity of the times of Mashiach. And this is actually a very important part. This is the Sikha, the talk that the Rebbe gives. Very, very profound talk that Rebbe gave on this week's Parsha, the last time he spoke on this Parsha. He says, if you look at the word for exile and the word for redemption, they're basically the same word, Goyla and Geula. The only difference is an Aleph. In an unlimited God, the only difference between the future and the present is being unlimited. So the idea of Mashiach is not a transformation of the world from the world that we know. There will still be people, still be time and space, there will still be growth. Everything will be the same except for one thing, that it will all be infinite in the finite. This message, the call Didi, the Dalgal, the Mashiach, the God of Yeser. Douglas have a little my deal with the Pesach Sheni, who deal with God the Yeser, my deal with the Pesach Sheni, Tia says about Doug Medag, the Dark Cloud, Sacked him Miyad Hainagon, and Bias Mashiach, can you help you? Can you the thing? Like, tell him, hate of your main no mamish. The Mashiach should immediately come.